Good evening. Pleasure to see you all. Thank you for coming out to the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners meeting for April 17th. As usual, I'll ask you, please, if you have electronic devices or anything else that makes a lot of noise in an unsolicited manner. If you'd silence that, we would appreciate it at this time. In a moment, we're going to be pleased to welcome Pastor Greg up here. Greg Roberts is from Growing Oaks Community Church in Reidsville. And I'll be asking you to stand and to remain standing. But right after the invocation, Commissioner Houston Barrow is going to make an introduction of the young people leading our Pledge of Allegiance. So if you'd stand at this time, and Pastor Robertson, please come forward.
Let's pray. God, we just thank you for this beautiful day, Lord, that you've blessed us with. God, we thank you for your grace and your love and your goodness towards us. God, I pray as we conduct a meeting this evening, Lord, I just pray for your Holy Spirit to guide all the business that will happen in this meeting. And God, we pray for your good hand and a favor and grace to be upon Rockingham County. Lord, we just thank you, God, for your hand and your grace here among us in this county. And Lord, we pray, Lord, not only for our local county, but God, we pray for our state. We pray for our nation. God, we just pray and we ask for, once again, your good hand of grace and love and peace to bless this great land. Jesus, we love you. We pray this and we ask it in the name of Jesus. Amen. Amen.
All right, so tonight we have Avery and Aubrey Herndon. Avery is a kindergartner, and Aubrey is in the second grade at Monroe Elementary School. So if you ladies would come up and lead us in the pledge.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Great job. Great job.
I can see that our county manager is getting ready for item 4, which is a resolution, and I will turn that over to Lance Metzler.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. This resolution is honoring Robert Ray Bob Carter. Whereas Robert Ray Bob Carter was born in Reidsville, North Carolina, and grew up as an only child on a tobacco farm in Rockingham County, where he developed a love for the land and was captivated by the stories of the past his father and others shared. And whereas Bob Carter graduated from Wentworth High School in 1956, where he was voted most intelligent by his senior class, began farming and continued to develop a deep interest in the stories of the past, which led to a lifelong curiosity in discovering details and facts about local history and genealogy. And whereas he started out in the 1960s researching genealogy and then began his quest into county history, with his inquisitiveness inspiring him to take many history classes over the years. The Rockingham Community College, taught by Dr. Lindley Butler, a fellow historian, where he met many people who had stories that gave him a deeper understanding of Rockingham County and its people. And whereas in 1991, Bob Carter began working as the historical consultant for Rockingham County Community College, Gerald B. James Library's historical collection room, and worked there 22 years researching family histories and organizing donations. And whereas in 2002, Bob Carter, due to his dedicated services and outstanding contributions to the college and community in the area of historical research, writing, and teaching, was officially named Rockingham County Historian by the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners. And whereas after his retirement from Rockingham Community College in 2012, he began working for the Museum and Archives of Rockingham County, which he was instrumental in opening. And whereas he became the collection consultant at the MARC and was called and visited by people from all over the country to help research their families and their connections to family land, and has only recently reduced his time voluntarily. now working to ensure the preservation of his historic collection. And whereas Bob Carter has spent countless hours volunteering and serving on many boards, including the Rockingham Historical Society, now the Mark, Eden Historical Museum, Wentworth Historic Preservation Committee, Mayo River State Advisory Committee, the Naturalist Club, Sons of the American Revolution, and Sons of the Confederacy, giving generously of his time and expertise. And whereas Bob Carter has spent his life following his passion for learning as much as possible about Rockingham County's history, and has been dedicated to helping others learn about their genealogy according to the Mark president, Jeff Bullins, he is one of the main attractions of the museum. Now, therefore, be it resolved that the Rockingham County Board of Commissioners does hereby honor Robert Ray Bob Carter and expresses their appreciation for his lifelong dedication to researching and preserving the rich history of Rockingham County and conserving and protecting it for the citizens of Rockingham County both now and for future generations. This, the 17th day of April 2023. Congratulations.
Mr. Carter, I've let you sit as long as possible, but we're going to ask you to come forward, and we're going to take a photo op with all the commissioners and present this to you.
We just go ahead right over here. Hard of hearing, so.
Yeah. Well, yeah. No, you're in great shape. You're supposed to be a center of this, and it's a great pleasure to have you here, Bob. When I first came back to the county, I was fortunate enough to have many sessions with Bob as part of Leadership Rockingham and other activities, and you've indeed given most graciously of your time, and you've been intuitive on the items that we needed to protect and the history we needed to save. And so Commissioner Hall is going to present you this plaque. You only have to hold it long enough to get a picture, and we'll have somebody carry it for you.
I think I can do that.
In addition to this, we'd like to present you with this being from Rockingham County. You're in a good place.
Okay,
Thank you, sir.
thank you. Well, I might say a few words if y'all.
Please do.
We're going to give you this because we want it broadcast and we want it recorded.
Well, I didn't prepare a speech, but we didn't have time for that anyway. But anyway, a few words. I guess I've had a lifelong interest in the history of Rockingham County. My father, I guess, is part to blame for that. He told me all kinds of stories from when he was growing up, and I got interested in times past. So when I took as a hobby trying to collect history of all kinds, of course, you know, we lose most of our history, but maybe we can save some of it. And so I certainly made the effort, and I probably got 35 boxes of material that I've collected over the last 60 years. And it would seem a shame to, you know, do away with that. So since the Mark is really pushing history in the county and trying to do good work, I decided I would donate my work to the Mark. And Debbie Brown is helping me, and I hope we live long enough to get it right. But it's going to take a long time. But anyway, thank y'all. I appreciate this. Thank you.
That's all we've got for you, except this is the only guy that I talk to that understands Rocky Springs School. He can tell me all about it, and I'll guarantee you if you bring up something obscure like that, he can tell you about it. So look up Bob Carter. Thank you again, sir.
Okay, thank y'all. Thank everybody. One little thing, some of you probably didn't know, in the 50th years I was working, looking, trying to gather history, I phoned part-time. So I got one of my processes from the pain now.
Great friend of the county there. What an honor to be here tonight. Gentlemen, you've had the agenda for almost 2 weeks now, and I understand there may be an amendment prior to approval.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead.
I make a motion we approve tonight's agenda with the exception of item 8.3. I make a motion we approve it and remove item 8.3.
Motion made. Second. Seconded. Further discussion here, none. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Also, you've had the consent agenda for a similar period of time. And for those of you listening, the consent agenda is generally non-controversial items. However, if anybody has a specific item that they need further explanation on, please contact our county manager, Lance Metzler, and he'll be glad to go through that. That said, having reviewed the consent agenda, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Motion to?
Second.
Second. Further discussion? Hear none. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye.
Aye.
Public comment. Now, tonight we have 3 names for public comment, but I think we're going to have 2 presentations, and we're going to start with Cindy Adams, but you can come on up, but while you're coming up, our county manager is going to explain the rules of the game.
Chair, the public comment period shall be for the purpose of allowing members of the public to present any matter pertaining to county business or items on the Board of Commissioners' agenda. Remarks should be addressed directly to the Board of Commissioners, not to the staff, the audience, or media. The chairperson shall open the public comment period. Any speaker who wishes to speak shall approach the podium and not speak from his or her seat. Each speaker will clearly state his or her name and physical address when he or she approaches the podium. Citizens shall be allotted 3 minutes. Citizens will be allowed to yield their time on a specific topic by utilizing one more attendee's time. This would allow no more than 6 minutes. Your time will be displayed on the monitor in front of you. The clock will start with 3 minutes unless yielded time to 6 minutes. You will hear a beep at 1 minute to alert you to wrap up your comments. If you already yield your time or time is yielded to you, then please let the chairperson know in advance. Speakers will not be allowed to campaign for public office, promote private business ventures, or use language of a personal nature which insults or demeans any person or which, when directed at a public official, is not related to his or her official duties. The Board of Commissioners may accept written comments in lieu of oral statements. Written statements can be delivered to the county manager's office. Mr. Chair.
Thank you much. That said, Cindy, where are you from?
Okay. I am Cindy Adams. I am the Marketing, Tourism, and Special Events Manager for the City of Eden. And I am here this evening to talk about our Year of the Trail. I know you've heard of that. There's a lot of marketing going on. The governor deemed North Carolina the Great Trail State. And in 2023, this is the Year of the Trail statewide. And Rockingham County took that very seriously. We formed an awesome committee. Everybody on there is working hard. We have events scheduled all throughout the year up until December. But I particularly want to talk about this coming weekend. And it's our kickoff. It's the Trail Days weekend in Eden and throughout the county. It is April 21st through 23rd. On Friday, we will kick it off at Reynolds Brewery on Meadow Road from 5 to 8. There'll be representatives from the state there. There'll be Year of the Trail swag for sale. We'll have a lot of free things to give away. There'll be live music. It'll be outside. Of course, you can have the beverages and food there at the brewery. And then we're going to do a really cool twilight hike on the Smith River Greenway. We've got headlamps and everything, so it'll be a real cool experience. On Saturday, we have lots of guided paddles, bike trails, hikes all day long. We're going to hike the Mayo River State Park, paddle on the Smith and the Dan Rivers. We're going to hike at Lake Reedsville. There'll be a guided mountain bike ride at Ferris Park. We're going to hike the Chinkapin Walking Trail, paddle on the Dan River in the afternoon, and hike on the Smith River Greenway in the afternoon. So it's all kinds of things to do, all levels of expertise. Most anybody can do any of these. And then that evening, we have partnered with the Chamber of Commerce to do an event in Uptown Eden called Sip, Shop, and Celebrate the Year of the Trail. All the shops will be open again, food and beverage, tastings, all kinds of things. I have free tickets for you if you want them. They're $10 if you buy them, but I have them for you. This is 5 to 8 as well. And then on Sunday, we'll culminate everything. The county tourism office did a great trail guide, and that you can do a self-guided trip on Sunday or all throughout the year. You can't do them all in one weekend, and so we want to encourage everyone to do that. And we also want to thank you for your support of outdoor recreation. Rockingham County is blessed with lots of trees, trails, lakes, creeks, and rivers, and we are becoming a destination for those wanting to explore and enjoy the big outdoors from both within our county and outside of our county. All these natural resources paired with thriving downtowns, restaurants, nice hotels, fun events, and great customer service creates tourism, which is a form of economic development, which in turn creates jobs, which in turn produces dollars. So let's keep on looking for ways to create outdoor places and enhance our existing amenities for both our citizens and visitors to come explore and create some awesome memories. And I hope to see you all Friday night. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Cindy Adams, and remarkably good time, and I might add.
Yeah, I was counting down.
Yeah, and I hope you caught that part of the trails, not all the trails are dry. Some of them are waterways, so thank you very much. Next, we have Amy Steele is going to make a presentation in regard to help for the homeless, and she's going to bring her left-hand lady with her there, Dawn Stone. And if you'd give us your name and where you live.
My name is Amy Steele. I'm at 3182 US 220 in Madison, and I'm here on behalf of Rockingham County Help for Homeless. I'm the executive director there. And I know the word homeless has a bad connotation with so many people, but just who are the homeless? They're single moms with small children that may be fleeing domestic violence. They're very educated people who may have lost jobs, which resulted in the loss of health insurance. People with mental or physical disabilities who can no longer work. Elderly people who may have expensive prescriptions to fill. Mom or dads with kids who just lost the love of their lives and are just trying to make ends meet. Long-term tenants who are losing what they thought would be their forever home because landlords could not resist the profit that's in this crazy housing market today. People are caught up in situations through no fault of their own, and they just need a stable environment where they can feel safe and raise their children. We at Rockingham County Help for Homeless provide rental assistance, utility assistance, food, school supplies, prescription assistance, assistance with medical copays, and lots of other case management tools. We are a nonprofit, 501c3 nonprofit, and we're primarily funded through government HUD grants. However, with the homeless crisis skyrocketing in our state, there are more and more agencies that are applying for this same pot of money. So with that being said, Rockingham County has lost approximately $200,000 in federal money to help house those that are in need. The county, we at Help for Homeless are desperately needing help from the county if there are any funds available to do so. But please pray for the families that this agency supports. Without the necessary funds that we are trying to raise, there will be several families put back on the street because of lack of resources and money to help them. Thank you for your time.
Steele, we appreciate that. Thank you, Dawn, for being here as well.
Thanks.
That completes public comment. We have several public hearings tonight. Mr. Marziano. If you would start us off.
Thank you. Let me get this. All right, the first one we have tonight is case 2023-03. This is a rezoning request from property that is zoned residential protected and residential agricultural to become just residential agricultural, split zoned currently. It's located in the Huntsville Township at 466 Eden Church Road. This is a straight, or rather non-conditional rezoning. The planning board heard this on March 13th and voted 5-1 to recommend approval. As you can see, it's southwest quadrant of the county. It looks like it's two parcels. It's one under one tax pin. The road does split, but you can see the RP section in the northern part of the parcel and the RA in the southern. They're trying to convert the whole thing to RA. Environmentally, there are some wet areas nearby, not unusual for this area. With our land use map, this is zoned, it's in the O2 land class, which does call for lands to become or preferred to be residential agricultural. We found this to be consistent and reasonable based on the requests presented.
Public hearing, are there any questions from the commissioners? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing. Nobody has signed up for this particular case, Mr. Marziano. Has anybody come in since the sign up?
The applicant wants to speak. The applicant is here. I don't know if they want to speak or not.
That's up to her. Unless the commissioners have questions, she's welcome to relax back there. All right. I will now close the public hearing and once again offer the opportunity for questions from the commissioners. Hearing none, do I have a motion?
Make a motion that we, wait a minute, we're going to put this, where's all that language we got to put in this thing?
Oh, you got to say this case and this number.
Okay. So I make a motion that we accept case 2023-03 zoning amendment from residential protected to residential agriculture.
Motion made. Second. Seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye. 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 Those opposed by nay. Hope you enjoy Eden Church Road. I've always enjoyed it.
All right, the next case is 2023-04. This is a rezoning request to take a piece of property also in the Huntsville Township on Highway 220 from Highway Commercial Conditional District to Highway Commercial. This is a non-conditional rezoning, so we'd be going from conditional zoning back to regular rezoning. The board did vote unanimously 6-0 at their planning board meeting in March to recommend approval. Again, southwestern quadrant. As you can see, this property is surrounded by other highway commercial properties that are non-conditional. They're all straight as well, so this property is an anomaly, and I believe the desire is just to become conforming with the surrounding area. It's in our G3 land class, which is our heavy growth corridor up the highway, which does call for a myriad of commercial developments. That's all I got.
Questions before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing. Nobody has signed up for this case as well.
The applicant is here, though, if you want to ask questions.
Thank you. There no further public comment. I will close the public hearing, and I will advise my fellow commissioners. I checked this property out personally today. I didn't see anything of significant consequences, and would welcome a motion to approve or deny.
I make a motion to approve case 2023-04, rezoning from highway commercial conditional district to highway commercial.
Motion made.
Second.
Seconded. Discussion. Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Done deal, Mr. Carter. Item 4, I believe.
Yes, the next one on the list was withdrawn. So the next one would be 2023-07, which is a public initiated text amendment. This is a text amendment that would allow for religious schools to be placed at religious institutions on the same site in the residential protected district. Currently, we don't allow schools in the RP zone. The language that they have proposed was included in your packet. It would still follow all the same rules that we would apply for schools in the RA district. So it still have to go through the special use permit process, meet the development standards of the ordinance. Specifically, though, this would be religious schools at religious institutions would be the only condition that would be different from the RA district. It was voted on at the Planning Board 6-0 to recommend approval.
Gentlemen, you have questions before we open the public hearing? Hearing none, I will open the public hearing, and once again, nobody has signed up to speak on this item. Has anybody come in and wish to address it? Hearing none of those desires, I will close the public hearing and open it to commissioner questions.
Yes. Marzie. Yes, sir. You mentioned development standards. My only question is whether or not the development standards in the RP district are any different than the development standards in the RA district.
They're not technically. The development standards would be section 6279, which is on the screen currently. That's what we require of schools in the RA. They'd have to meet the same parking standards. They have to meet the same circulation points and like that for the school section on the church property. Otherwise, it'd still follow Article 5 developmental standards of the ordinance for any commercial property. So lighting and signage and everything would be also included in that.
What, if any, differences apply to a school compared to a church as far as the parking and the lighting?
Our religious institutions regulations don't follow the same circulation and parking requirements that we do for the schools. As far as I know, it just follows our standard commercial operations.
Okay. Has that been discussed with the applicant?
We did just talk with the applicant about what would be required from the current ordinance. Yes.
Okay. All right.
Mr. Powell.
I'm looking on your Rockingham County text amendment, section 62.79B, where it says site plan should be submitted which demonstrates that the proposed site meets criteria for minimum site characteristics adopted by NC Department of Public Instruction and NC Department of Community Colleges. My question for you is that are they the body that governs religious education or religious schools?
Not as far as I would know off the top of my head. I'd have to look into that for you.
And my question would be, why would we make a religious institution follow those same guidelines?
I don't know. He's keep consistency. This was applied for by the applicant. This was their recommendation. This is without us tampering with anything. So their proposal is to do the same regulations that we would do for any school in the RA district, also in the RP district for religious institutions.
But once we approve this, it would be the same criteria for any other religious school that applied under the same text, right? Correct. So if they were in an RP area.
Only if they're in an RP zoning district.
That's right. So if they were in an RP area, they would have to do that. So my question, therefore, is it doesn't matter to me whether the applicant submitted this or not. It's going to be binding on future religious institutions. And, you know, there are quite a few constitutional guarantees and protections for religious institutions. So I want to make sure that we're not making them adopt the rules of the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction or community colleges if they do not already fall under that for the religious education there.
I understand. I think I also misunderstood the first part. If this was a school going in the RA district, we'd treat it this way regardless of what institution. it'd still be a school in the RA district. So a school in the RP district, even if it was a religious school in the RA district, we would treat it with these rules. So.
Well, we can change those the next time, but
But what I'm saying, though, is all schools, religious, charter, whatever, would follow these rules in any of the other districts they're currently allowed in. So to answer your question, we wouldn't be making them do something extra.
I think what you're getting at, though, is what's the governing standard and whether or not we're subjecting them to DPI, which they're trying to get away from.
That's exactly
and
right.
So maybe what we need to do is review this part of the text when we review the next part. So as far as what's under number 5.
So what do we need? What do we need to do here? Do we need to vote on this and approve this? Because if we approve it as it is now, I'm not going to vote for this.
Well, but I believe we could vote on it tonight and still make amendments in the future to this very section after we hold the other public hearings that are scheduled.
If we make those amendments later, will that retroactively apply to this? I realize that the applicant seems to be okay with this. I just don't want to set a precedent that religious schools are under the authority of DPI.
It would subject them between tonight and whenever we come back to whatever these rules are that we adopt.
Well, I concur with you, gentlemen, and I would, at this time, I've got to have a public hearing here.
I just have a question. So, Marzi, you said they submitted this? Did they submit this from our UDO the way that
this language right here currently is in our UDO.
So this is in our UDO for RA regardless of whether it's a religious. So we should probably review this with the other. Yeah, okay.
We're going to have some conversation about reviewing the whole UDO shortly.
You can make any changes to their application tonight if you want. So you can strike that from this if you desire.
That would be, I would like to, if we need to do that in the form of a motion, Mr. Attorney, I would like to make the motion that we strike the wording that says they will adopt the minimum site characteristics as set forth by the North Carolina Department of Public Instruction and Department of Community Colleges, if those organizations have no governing authority over the school anyway.
This would be for Christian schools only.
That's right, religious institutions.
A simple edit, in my opinion, of at the end of that sentence, adding the terms excluding those under the RP district for religious institutions.
Well, my preference would be, gentlemen, since we're going to be asking for a review from our UDO committee, to include this. Your thoughts?
I think it's a simple matter to go ahead and take care of this. I hate to let this go forward because we might not get the opportunity to come back and.
I'm good either way. I think it's important to hear from the applicant instead of making assumptions on behalf of the applicant. But, I mean, I'm good either way.
I would suggest to you, is the applicant here?
Yep.
Yes.
We're going to have public comment in a moment, or we will open the public meeting. Are there more questions before I open the public hearing?
There's, I have no more questions.
All right. So you're holding your motion in abeyance till we hear more?
Until you do the public hearing.
All right. Thank you. Nobody has signed up. However, I do see the applicant here, according to Mr. Marziano.
Yes, sir. I'm Corey Ingerbretson, live at 280 Fulp Sawmill Road in Stoneville, North Carolina. And I guess just open it up, we're looking on this side of the road, so we have 18 acres across the road. There's an RA district already, and we will be moving forward with future school, but our issue right now is when we're looking to start the school, we will not have a building prepared and ready for that. We are in a building process right now with an architect trying to get things going, and so we are looking to expand the school in the future across the street in the RA district that is already there, but where the church is right now, the existing buildings we have are on the RP district, and so whatever you fellas deem necessary in the wording to be able to make it, I do agree with what what you're saying. I would hate to tie down any, whether that means, holding this out for another meeting or whatever that means. I would hate to hold a religious organization down in the future from starting any kind of religious school, holding them down to anything that is not necessary. And so if y'all have any questions, love to answer those. And my hope is to start, our heart is to start the school where we have the church now, on the existing buildings. And so that's why we're doing this.
When would you need to start? Because August, is that your startup date? Is that
August of 24. So we have over a year to be able to get to that point.
So would there be a problem with tabling this for 30 days to get this language? I have an issue with subjecting you to the control of a government agency as a religious organization if you're not subject to that anyway.
And I do appreciate that and agree. I just putting in the language, and the reason we put it that way is because even in the RA district, which is across the street, we are still going to have to go by those guidelines, and so that's the only reason that we went ahead and put it that way.
Well, maybe not, but when we decided tonight.
Let's, if we can ask Mr. Albright, if we were to approve as written tonight to allow them to continue with their plans and then make modifications to the UDO that kind of reduce those restrictions, I believe those reduced restrictions or that reduced language would then apply to the applicant. Is that correct?
That's correct. And you could hold deliberations at a subsequent meeting to finalize that.
Yes, sir.
Before voting.
Well, we may have another option there, Counselor. Should an emotion come forward that included amended language, we could move from there. And also, that would not forego the option in the future if we need to do adjustment. Correct?
Would it be possible, Marzi, to have the text language put back up on our screen, please?
Thank you, sir.
Well, did anybody else have questions of the applicant? Sorry. I am going to close the public. Is there further comment from the public? Hearing none, I'm going to close the public session, and I'm going to refer to Commissioner Powell with the thought of making a motion that includes amended language. And Marzi, I assume you can see right in front of me the same thing I'm looking at.
I think that I would like to make a motion that we strike the language under 62.79B. I think that if we strike that period, then they fall under the subjected rules of the county as far as their building and the state as far as their building. Yes, sir.
That would 62.79 exists currently for that line item as a whole. So if you strike that, it strikes it for all schools.
So do we need to put religious institutions behind it?
My professional recommendation would just be at the end of that sentence, accepting religious institutions.
I would be okay with your recommendation. So I would make a motion that we add at the end of the sentence that says instruction - North Carolina Department of Community Colleges except for religious institutions.
Further questions of the commissioners?
Actually, let's do one more thing at the very end of the paragraph, because we've got another reference to Department of Public Instruction and Community College requirements. So at the very end of that paragraph on B, we would add the language that says except for religious institution, plural.
Marzi, I want to make sure you have a good copy on that before we go forward. Good.
Lynn's got it back there, but I'm getting it here too.
Okay, and I assume all commissioners understand what just went past. And I have a motion on the floor. And second, further discussion?
Got one question. Mr. Albright, I just want to make sure that the location of accepting for religious institutions is not in a location in that sentence that would be confusing to future readers of the ordinance so that will apply to both sentences in B. Are you comfortable with the location?
Yes, I think it works better if you put it at the end of both sentences, because the first one talks about submitting the site plan, and the second one talks about what the site plan shall include.
Yes, sir. Are y'all okay with amending your motion in second?
Well,
so
I think
in both
that's
locations?
where I offered to put it the second time.
But he's saying put it in both.
Both.
Oh, both locations, yes, sir. We will amend the motion to put it in both locations at the end of both sentences in that paragraph.
Yes.
Commissioner Hall?
Yes.
Further discussion? Hearing none. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. We're about to go to case 5, and I think case 2023-08, and I believe Commissioner Powell has an amendment.
I'm sorry, which one? Well, no, I think we need to do
we're going to hear it.
Yeah, we're going to
do
the public hearing, and then I'll make the motion at the end of the public hearing for all of that. This is the way I've been told we're supposed to do it.
What you just heard is we're going to have a public hearing that is going to include all of case 5, except, well, at this time it includes all of case 5. I will open the public hearing. I do not have any applicants to speak. Has anyone arrived since? Hearing none, I will close the public hearing and turn it over to commissioners as they desire.
Is he going to do a presentation?
Go ahead. Go ahead.
These are staff-initiated text amendments. At the planning board meeting in March, they voted unanimously 6-0 to approve. The first one up is standards for mobile home, for manufactured homes on individual lots. This is your single-wide, double-wide manufactured homes. The language in your ordinance, what we're trying to do is reorganize and clarify the language. We're trying to focus more on the affordability options of affordable housing. These standards have been here pretty much since the 90s, and in this current market, we're finding that it's more and more difficult for people to comply with such statements, and currently, a lot of the homes currently come in with the roof pitch that we already need and everything. We're also trying to maintain consistency with building code, getting those deck sizes down to what the code requires, 9 by 9 on a single wide. We're doing 24 square feet we're doing for double wide, and that's if the door opens out. So, you know, this is just a cleanup of the current rules and trying to bring it up to current standards. Any questions on the manufactured houses? I'll move on. Landscape design standards. A reminder, this is for non-residential uses only. Again, we're trying to clarify this language to make it easier for people to understand what they're reading when we go through this ordinances with them, so they know what's expected of them in developing these projects, simplifying some of the regulations, adding in language to encourage native species to the area as opposed to harmful species that may be brought in. Any questions on this one? I know it's a lot to slog through, so I didn't want to try to put everything on these screens.
Please carry on.
All right. Next one then would be TRC and major subdivisions. This is also cleaning up some of the language. When we edited the roads last fall, we didn't take into account this section that still mentions county private roads. We don't have county private roads anymore, so we're removing that part of it. This does allow for an administrative review for major subdivisions, which defined in our ordinance is 6 lots or more. For anything under 12 lots that doesn't have any road, public utilities, anything outside of a well and septic requirement for the lots to be handled at an administrative review. The TRC has voiced concerns about how their time is being spent reviewing things that they don't have any comments for because it doesn't relate to any of their disciplines. So we feel 12 lots was more than enough to cut off as a cutoff. Clarified the vested rights languages that applies to subdivisions, and also brought the time frame into what we've been doing departmentally. No one ever has required them to show up 45 days prior to the meeting. As soon as we get it, 2 weeks later, it's scheduled. So we clarified that we'll make a meeting within 30 days. So any questions, concerns? All right, moving on. Wireless telecommunication towers, they're a fun Again, clarified a lot of this language. It's technical, trying to simplify some things. We simplified and explained how the special use permit process is working out. We didn't have a definition for fall zone. We added that in there. What we have been doing since the previous ordinances is height of the tower plus 10% and also an engineered developed fall zone that can reduce it by 20%. We put it in writing as that's how it's been applied. So those are the major changes in that one. Anything? Okay. This one's simple, ADU and guest house. We have both of them in our ordinance. They're defined as the same thing. Guest house really was supposed to be deleted in the previous edit because we've moved to accessory dwelling units now. So leaving accessory dwelling unit in there and removing guest house. And then finally, shipping containers as an accessory use still would not be considered structures used for non-residential purposes, principal non-residential properties, which is everything but houses and multifamily. If we did move forward with this, we're talking about screening from public view, neighboring parcels, would not be connected to utilities, and then there's a size limit on available space in the containers based on the serving structure. And that's what I got for you.
Okay. We've already offered the public a chance to speak regarding this issue. I think it's appropriate now, considering what's on the floor, to accept motions from commissioners.
I have a question first, if I could ask this. Under the shipping containers, you've got fencing them in or some kind of obstruction review. How did you arrive at that, considering that these are being approved for basically commercial use and churches? So is it prudent to ask Walmart to build a fence in the back of their parking lot when they have these there for some period of time? They're already a commercial establishment abiding by all the other rules that the county puts on them, or another commercial establishment. So do we have to do that too?
No, it's just, it's one of those best practices that we always look at doing when something that we consider to be more handled through nuisance abatement, as we do handle them currently, to bring them more into use. We would usually go for some type of screening from the neighbors and from the public view. Again, you're talking about Walmart. If it's all the way in the back and they've already got their privacy fence from their neighboring property, they wouldn't have any public view from the right-of-way.
But they wouldn't be exempt from this as it stands either.
No, but if they're already...
when we make one law, we make it for everybody.
Right, but if there's already existing conditions on the property that satisfies that, then it's fine.
And so then what about a church? Church has one, they paint it the same color of their church. It's sitting in the parking lot behind the front of their building. And all of a sudden, they're going to have to go out there and drill holes through their pavement and put a fence around it.
Possibly. I mean, that depends on y'all. That was our recommendation. Right. There's not a lot of places in the state that does this as a principal and as a primary use, right, or even as accessory use. So it's more, temporary uses. But anytime we go with these kind of nuisance things in other like situations, we would go with a screening type
now, is situation. There anything in our ordinances that would require this outside of this particular revision to the shipping containers that you've requested?
I'm sorry, what was that?
Is there any other thing in any of the other ordinances that would require screening around this outside of this ordinance where you've put that language in that you know of?
Well, technically speaking, yeah, we do require screening of commercial properties from residential properties next door. So we do require screening, but of a specific individual object, no. Not that I could think of at the top of my head.
How about cars?
Well, we do allow for some junk cars and outdoor storage, yes.
I happen to remember that one. So another question along the lines there, and I'm guilty or used to be guilty. Do you treat tractor trailers, just the trailer part, the same as you do connexes, the containers?
Currently, yes, they're treated as the same. Shipping containers and trailers are both technically not allowed by our ordinance.
Yeah, I know a lot of people use them as storage now.
Yep.
Is there a time limit on that? How long can you park your trailer, storing stuff?
I'd have to go through and talk to code enforcement if there's any provisions for that. From what I understand, if it's not considered outdoor storage and we see them, they're supposed to be removed if they're not being used as part of someone's business, as in like a truck business that has their own trailer.
And just for confirmation, just to make sure I understood Don's question or Commissioner Powell's question and your answer. So if we've got a neighborhood commercial property, there's other portions of the ordinance that require screening, whether they've got these containers or not.
Yes, the landscape ordinance which is discussed earlier part of this is part of that screening provision. It screens residential properties from commercial properties. It also covers in the open storage areas or outdoor storage areas about vehicles and things like that. But yes, if a neighborhood commercial property went up, they'd have some type of screen buffer between them and their neighbor. The dumpsters technically should be screened as well.
Is that located somewhere else in the ordinance?
It should be under the commercial standards.
So is there any benefit to having what I'm viewing as redundant? Maybe it's not redundant, but I guess that's the question. Is this redundant language by also putting it here?
It could be. Based on my experience, I can't account for every possible situation that arises. I mean, one could look at it definitely as redundant. I look at it as an insurance. And to be honest and completely honest, we're going from this from a standpoint of if I'm the neighbor looking at this stuff, not if I'm the business putting it out there.
Sure.
That's the way I tried to look at this.
Well, gentlemen, we've had, excuse me there, you had more?
No, sir. No, sir. I'm good.
So I guess I want to clarify the question that Commissioner Berger was clarifying. So commercial properties as it stands, as written, have to have screening if they are in a residential area. That's correct?
If they abut a residential zone, they must screen that side.
So in that situation, if they had this or whether they didn't have this, they would still have to have it screened?
Of some form of the property, yes.
Okay. So you're saying, if I'm following, there wouldn't have to be some sort of additional screening like the way the dumpster is boxed in?
That's what I'm getting at is if they would have to, let's take the Walmart example that Commissioner Powell brought up. If it's in the rear behind the building that I can't see from the highway and my neighbors behind the building already have their fence between Walmart and that property and they can't see it, they wouldn't have to do anything. But the only provision this says is it can't be in the front of the building. So let's say they put it to the side of the building, they'd have to erect something on that side that didn't have the screen that then would screen it from the public right of way.
So if it would be in a place that's visible to the public that's not already screened, it would be required to be screened. Okay, right. Thank you.
The way it's currently written.
Right, gotcha. Thank you.
Questions? There's been a suggestion that these items that you brought up under case 2023-08 need further review except for item Roman numeral 6. So, with that suggestion and at the pleasure of the commissioners here, we would entertain a motion.
I would like to make a motion that we remove item number 6 under case number 2023-08 and take that up tonight at this meeting. And then I think I would like to make a motion that we table the remaining items until our next meeting, until we've had sufficient time to have them reviewed. Is that correct?
My only thing is I don't know that saying that 2 or 2.5 weeks, 3 weeks, I don't know that we can, I wouldn't put a time frame on it.
That's fine. We can omit the time frame. We'll just table it pending further action.
Well, I'm going to take that to be one motion to table items 1 through Roman numeral 5, and we will take up 6 in further detail. Discussion. Second.
Second. I can't second. I motioned it.
Second.
Motion and second. Further discussion. Here none. All in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Mr. Powell's pretty aggressive tonight, you know.
Would you still like to ask a question?
Yeah, you know, I kind of like the technique.
Marzi, you might want to hang around just a minute. You might not have to.
Mr. Chair, I just had a question for further discussion, but I can ask now if it's okay.
Certainly.
The idea was to review. Who are we talking about doing a review?
Well, I think any of us can, but we also had the committee that was established with the land use plan. Those folks are more than happy to review the information that's here. Perhaps they've even had some, I guess you can say, things that they may want to tell us as far as issues.
This was all for public knowledge, so.
Sure.
Yeah, thank you.
So really just get it to some of the folks that have been using the ordinance, see their thoughts on any changes. Is there anything else that may need to be adjusted? Because I believe we can make whatever changes to the ordinance that we feel necessary at this point. We've had the public hearing, and there may be some other things that need to be adjusted, but that's what we're looking at.
Thank you, Commissioner Berger, and thank you, Mr. Chair.
You're welcome.
Before you move forward, I just want to make sure that our attorney's comfortable with where we're at, and I believe we've had a motion to take it up, but I don't know have we actually adopted anything with number 6 at this point?
Not yet.
Okay.
It's my understanding we have not.
Yes, okay.
No, you have not.
Yes.
His verbiage was for discussion, which we will now open. We've already addressed to the public, so this is amongst the commissioners, further discussion regarding shipping containers.
So I would like to remove the language that talks about the barriers because I believe that our commercial businesses are already covered by that. And then the other area that was of concern to me there again was the religious institutions. And I certainly would like to make sure that they're exempt from that. As I've said before, they have a lot of constitutional protections. I'm not sure that this is necessarily one of them, but we don't generally have problems with our local congregations, and I don't want to put any more burden on them than they may already have to bear.
Mr. Marziano, my first question would be, do you understand the exceptions that he's put out?
Sure.
Do you have language? That
no. So, I mean, this first, it's come to like this. If y'all want to, again, you're welcome to draft it any way you want to until you either table it or make a motion. I don't have any thoughts on the matter of that. My thoughts are presented in here based on the best research I was able to conduct. So
I was making a rash assumption you listened to him, and
no, I listen. I mean, the easy thing's always striking out the section that discusses it. I mean, that's the go-to easy part. But if you want to alter language, I don't have any alternate language. But if you want to remove, I mean, that's a red pen.
I think in this case, removing it takes care of the problem. Would you not? I mean,
takes care of the issue. I believe you're getting at. Yes.
Yes. So I think if we just red pen that or delete it, then the rest of the ordinance is good.
I'm just making sure we red pen the correct portions.
That would be number 4 under the proposed 6281.
And can you put that back up on our screen?
Unfortunately, I've already deleted the packet because I was walking away.
All right.
But the language wasn't up there anyway, so I didn't have the actual language on the screen, from the.
So it's in the back of it.
So it's in the back of your packet.
That's right. So it would be under 62.81, my motion would be to remove item number 4 in its entirety.
Correct.
So there's a motion to approve under case 2023-08, which is item 5 under public hearings, to approve, with the exception just mentioned by Commissioner Powell, item 6, Roman numeral 6. Is that understood by all commissioners?
No, that's not exactly correct. So the motion is to accept amendment to section 62.81, dealing with the shipping and storage containers, and to delete item number 4 under that section, which says containers must be screened from public view from a public right-of-way or from the adjacent parcel. Screening may be solid, opaque fencing, masonry walls, landscaped vegetation, or a combination of these options.
Do you understand?
I understand just to remove number 4 from the list. So, but are we, is that moving forward with the
He was
approval of
clarifying
the use?
that it's item 462.81.
Right, it's the text of numeral 4 under 62.81 of item Roman numeral 6.
That's correct.
Of case number 2023-08.
Gentlemen,
If we all understand that, then second.
Vote on it before it gets confusing again.
No, I want the commissioner to be comfortable. I'm comfortable with it because I knew we had the rhetoric discussed ahead of time. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Mr. Marziano?
Thank you. Thank you, boss.
Lance Metzler.
Taller than me.
Yeah, a little different. Let me see, there we go. Okay, Frank Sizemore, who's the director of the Carolina Marina, he's the director of operations, has requested approximately 4 buoys to be placed in high-volume trafficked areas. These areas are near the dry stack boat storage, the fuel dock, and the public boat access. The Wildlife Resource Commission, law enforcement did conduct an assessment matrix, and concurred that the areas on the map that you see will meet the needs for a no-wake zone. The process is that the county has to fill out a D1 application and provide a resolution from the governing body, which you all have in your packet. A public hearing is optional, but we've done this in the past, and I think it's good practice if we're going to make changes on the lakes that we do have a public hearing to receive public input. If you all do approve the resolution, then I'll submit the D1 application and resolution to the Wildlife Resources Commission. They do not meet until August, and will make a determination to proceed, not to proceed, or to proceed with modifications. Carolina Marina has agreed to purchase and maintain the buoys, and the Wildlife Resource Commission, law enforcement will help them set those buoys out there. Any questions?
And the public hearing will be after we get the report from the wildlife?
This is the public hearing. So you guys will vote to approve, to open up the public hearing, and then after you close it, you would vote to approve or disapprove the resolution.
Well, I think it's pretty clear what where the no-wake zone is. Questions of Lance Metzler before I open the public hearing?
And just for clarification, before there was really, I don't want to say it was the Wild West, but
they had them out there. They just weren't.
It wasn't official, and
yes, sir.
Different people put different things out, and
yes,
different
sir.
things got removed. And
that's correct.
Okay.
They wanted a lot more, by the way, but the Wildlife Resource Commission wouldn't approve the area to the south.
Well, in regards to item 8, we will open a public hearing at this time and seek anybody that has input regarding the no-wake zone for Blues Lake. Hearing no applicants, we will close the public hearing, open the question to commissioners for further questions.
Motion to approve.
Motion to approve. Motion seconded. Further discussion. Hearing none, all in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. The soon-to-be retired Mrs. Victoria Witt. Thank you so much for being patient with us. And her able-bodied assistant, Anthony Ward.
That was going to be my announcement.
Oh, I'm sorry.
No, thank you, thank you. Good evening. I'm Victoria Witt. I'm the CEO of Sand Hill Center, and this is Anthony Ward. He's the Deputy Director of Sand Hill Center. Our purpose for being here tonight is to submit the Sand Hill Center request for county general funding and to also give you a very brief update, program update. However, I would like to take this opportunity to thank the commissioners for your appointment of Commissioner Richardson and Keith Duncan, who is also here tonight, to the Sand Hill Center Board. They are good, excellent, I can't say enough nice things representatives to the Sand Hill Center Board. Not only are they faithful members and attenders, Commissioner Richardson also serves on the Sand Hill Center Executive Committee in that he is the chair of our Compliance Committee, and Keith Duncan serves on the HR Committee. So not only did they join the board, they also take active roles in the administration. So thank you so much for appointing them to the Sand Hill Center Board. As Commissioner Richardson said, I think everyone does know, after 43 years and 13 years as the CEO, I have decided to retire from Sand Hill Center. Anthony refers to me as a quitter. I think he thinks that's going to insult me, and I'm going to change my mind, but I don't mind being a quitter after 43 years. It has been my pleasure over the past 2 to 3 years working with Rockingham County as you joined Sand Hill Center. Thank you so much once again for the confidence you have placed in us to become one of our constituent counties. The other thing I want to announce is that our board last Tuesday did make the decision to appoint Anthony as the CEO of Sand Hill Center when I leave on July 1st. Anthony has served as the deputy director for about 11 years, so I was very pleased. Continuity is going to be very important, and I'm very pleased to make that announcement. Before we do our presentation, I just want to give him a few minutes, maybe seconds, to introduce himself. I think many of you have met him, but would like for him to introduce himself.
Good evening. It's good to be with you this evening. I've had the pleasure of working with you since the realignment. A couple of you worked on that process with us, and I enjoyed getting to meet you during that. I've also had the opportunity to work with you on the behavioral health urgent care proposal that's coming up just a bit. I've worked with a number of your staff and providers in the area, and I look forward to continuing to do that in the new role. By education, I have a master's in social work and business administration, so I can have a conversation about finances or about services with you. By experience, I was earlier in direct services with Guilford County, and then we merged with Sand Hill Center back in 2012 and 2013. I've been with Sand Hill Center since that time over a few of our operational divisions. So again, good to be with you. I look forward to working with you closely as we move forward. If you have any questions or if you have any constituent concerns, feel free to reach out, and I'll be glad to chat with you about those.
And now down to the business. The Sand Hill Center Board of Directors did meet on March 14th and made the decision that we would not request any additional funding from any of our 11 counties. As you're aware, maintenance of effort is required by counties for behavioral health services in your area. Last year, we requested $311,800. That's the request again this year. I would also remind you that that's the same amount of money that was going to Cardinal 2.5 years ago, so your maintenance of effort has stayed the same. We're fortunate to be able to hold the county allocations to that level because of Medicaid funding. As you all know, we took over the management of Medicaid funding back in 2012, and because of that funding, we have been able to maintain the county contribution at the same level for the past 19 years. So when you go into your budget deliberation, I hope you'll look favorably upon this request. I'll remind you that that money stays right here in Rockingham County as it does in all the other counties to fund services here. Here, it goes to Daymart Recovery to assist them with their outpatient operation. Without that funding, folks that do not have Medicaid there would be difficulty in serving them. This funding assists in that. So that is our request tonight. I'll be glad to answer any questions about that request before I turn it back over to Anthony to give you a brief program update. Anthony?
All righty. So a brief program update was sent to you earlier. I understand it is somewhere on this. I think I found it.
Not yet.
Okay. Do I have to view maybe the?
Help's coming.
The IT
Well,
guru.
Very good, I appreciate that. So there's several things that are in your packet. One of them here is the dashboard. I'm going to walk through that with you. There's also the quarterly report, the annual report, and a few other things that are in your packet. And in the interest of time, I'm not going to go through all of those. But what you have in front of you is the dashboard. This shows what's happening here locally in Rockingham County with dollars that we help manage. So it's the Sandhill Center individuals who are funded through Medicaid services, also funded through state funds and through county dollars. So the first thing you see there in the top left corner is the number of individuals served by month last calendar year. Moving around clockwise, you see the total investment in services that we manage locally is around $26 million. The largest of those is intermediate care facilities, which is smaller home, community-based homes for individuals. Innovation services are next, followed by long-term residential and PRTF. These are services when out-of-home placements are necessary for children. You see the continued list there. Then moving on around, you see individuals served last calendar year by their primary diagnosis, the largest of which is adult mental health, followed by child mental health. And then as you round out the clockwise around that sheet, you see the providers serving individuals last year. You see 282 providers served Rockingham County members last year. The largest of those is Daymark. That makes sense because Daymark has our widest array of funding. They have the county dollars, as Victoria mentioned. They have state contract with us. They also have Medicaid dollars. Importantly, they also have contracts with standard plans, so those that are serving other members for Rockingham County, as well as private insurance. Daymark's an important resource for you because they can serve as kind of the front door. They can refer folks to other providers throughout the area for you. You see others that are listed there as well. Cone Health, you see, that's both served in the through Annie Penn. It's also served through the center that is in Guilford County. That's the Behavioral Health Urgent Care. So services are provided throughout the area, some here in Rockingham County and some in adjoining counties. So I'll end with that, but certainly if you have any questions about the other information that's in your packet, I'll be glad to address those as well. Hearing none, I think that does it for me.
That concludes it.
Gentlemen, great opportunity here. These are the most knowledgeable people I know in the mental health arena in the entire state, so a good opportunity to ask questions. They must realize how far away Rockingham is from here. Going from Rockingham to Rockingham tonight.
I don't have the ability to close that back down. If somebody could do it, I'd appreciate it.
Are you going to hang around for item 10? Okay. Well, thank you very much for that presentation. We're going to move to item 10 momentarily. And we'll do that at this time, Mr. Manager.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'll just jump right into it. We had a small committee that consisted of Commissioner Barra and Powell, some representatives from Daymark, Felissa, myself, and I think Trey was also included to discuss options for an assessment-based facility, excuse me, which is part of option A that you all approved with a settlement. There was option A and option B, and you all approved option A. We had county representatives go visit a variety of different facilities across the state, one in Randolph County, the other was Guilford County, to look at what type of assessment-based facility that the county may be interested in embarking on. The proposal to you all is that we use an existing building, the county home building currently occupied by Daymark, and modify it to accommodate what's called a BHUC Lite, which I think is a new prototype that they haven't used yet. So from what I understand from Sandhills is that several eyes are on Rockingham County because this would be something unique that they may be interested in if it's successful, if you all proceed with it. The facility would be open 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, 365 days a year. They would provide immediate access, engagement, assessment, and referrals. The estimated cost to renovate the existing facility is $112,651, which I would recommend using half from the opioid settlement funds and the other half from fund balance. Billy West had given us an estimates on how much it would cost to operate the facility, and in your packet, it's $519,070 annually. We've got a commitment from Sandhills for a year to provide $250,000 for operations. I would recommend using $269,000 for the first year from the opioid settlement to fund the remaining portion of the operations. This would provide operations for 1 year. I can't provide you any definitive details on how to fund it after that first year, but this would provide at least the first year of operations. Again, this facility would be a big step in the direction to provide resources for mental health and substance abuse. We currently have, just for your benefit, we currently have $1.2 million in our bank account for the opioid settlement. A total of $8.8 million is committed for 18 years for this round. And if you all do approve, I would ask you to approve the concept, the resolution, and the budget revision. Mr. Chair?
Thank you very much. And I see our representatives here that answered those questions, so another highly qualified person to go forth. Gentlemen, questions regarding the resolution presented by Lance Metzler?
Well, the $18 million is not...
$8.8 million.
Okay, what is that money?
That's for over 18 years. That's the opioid settlement funds for the whole period of 18 years.
And that amount declines over time?
Yes, sir.
Okay.
It starts off like this. I think we get 700, and 700, it slowly starts going down to like 300,000 or 400,000 a year.
But eventually dries up?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So this is the first BHUC light in the state? As
I recall. Right, Anthony? Victoria?
Certainly the first in our area.
Well, I would ask, and your choice, Mrs. Witt or Mr. Ward, to explain for the viewing public, if you would, exactly what you mean by light and the services that are going to be provided.
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And I'll ask, well, it's on the way. Billy West is the CEO of Daymark. Daymark we've contracted with for a number of our behavioral health urgent cares in the area. There is one in Asheboro that Daymark operates. There's one in Richmond County and Rockingham City that Daymark operates for us. There's another behavioral health urgent care in Guilford County that Cone Health operates. The behavioral health urgent care is a 23-hour facility. It's open 24/7, 365. It's called 23-hour chairs or 23-hour availability because individuals are generally served in less than a 23-hour period of time. If an individual is served more than 24 hours, then you would need a bed and you meet other licensing standards. The behavioral health urgent care is similar to a physical health urgent care, just for behavioral health needs. So it features chairs where individuals can receive an assessment. When Daymark's operating those, then the Daymark staff are there to do the assessment. They make treatment plans, share with individuals what other options are. The important piece of the behavioral health urgent care is it allows the individual to step out of the crisis situation and receive immediate assistance. The behavioral health urgent care models that we have a higher staffing pattern, higher licensure, higher credentials of individuals that are work there. The model that's being proposed is a light model. So this model reduces some of that staffing pattern. It reduces some of the credentials that would be required to operate. That's going to reduce the expense of it. It gives up some of the possible Medicaid revenue that could be with a general behavioral health urgent care. But the model that Billy has put together has the financial piece of it seems to make sense, reducing that and having it in a smaller area. So Billy, is there other information you'd share about the BHUC?
Well, just to put it in context, we run right now walk-in clinic Monday through Friday, 8 to 5. Last year, we served roughly 1,368 people. During that period of time, we kept 352 out of the hospital, only sent 3 to the hospital, and had 1,013 that they came to us saying they were in crisis, and after spending somewhere around 8 hours with us, we were able to send them home with aftercare appointments, outpatient appointments. And what we're proposing here is to have it open all day, all night, all weekend, holidays, you name it. So will we double that number? Maybe not. I don't know. That's yet to be determined. The difference in what we're proposing and what we're doing, the state has very clear guidelines for what a BHUC is, and that allows you to bill Medicaid as well as indigent funding for that. Those guidelines are high. The standard is very high. It's expensive to operate. There's almost no way it'll break even in some of the largest counties in North Carolina. So what most payers have done is they have adopted alternative service definitions, and the state has approved them. For example, Mecklenburg County is the one we run there is 1.6 million. The one in Forsyth is 1.4 million. The one in Randolph is 1.6. The one in Richmond's 1.4. Well, how is that? Well, it's different because of the different staffing patterns, if you have security or not, what service definition has been approved by what MCO. None of those will break even on a fee-for-service basis with thousands of people coming through the door. Just this March, for example, when you do March to March, in Forsyth, we had almost 4,000 people show up in 1 year if you do a year from. So I doubt we see that number in Rockingham County. So how are you going to make that work? So what we've proposed is a minimum staffing pattern. All of these BHUCs are linked through us anyway, and they could be linked to a different provider if they had more than one. So if someone comes in the door at 2 a.m. on a Saturday night and there's not a clinician like myself that could do an involuntary commitment there, you're still in a locked facility here in Rockingham County. You could cut on a telehealth machine, and the clinician that is in Forsyth County can see them and do what you need done. So that's kind of the purpose. We're giving up some Medicaid dollars, but you're giving up less than $100,000. You're probably giving up less than $50,000 in Medicaid dollars, and you're saving well over $1 million in expenses. So that was the proposal of doing what we call a BHUC light. In other words, it does the same thing, but it doesn't need all those additional expenses. I don't know if any questions about that model.
That's very useful, and I do appreciate the time that you put into answering some individual questions that we had here, and I thought they're very pertinent questions. Since you've been at this more than a day or two, what would you consider success for a light BHUC in Rockingham County?
Well, first of all, I'd like to bring in a whole lot more people than me to try to define what that is, particularly after 6 months to a year of operation. But initially, what I would like to see is, if you take just our walk-in clinic numbers, 1,300 people, I would like to see that number get larger. Now we're open at night, weekends, holidays. We should see that number. We only sent 3 people to the emergency room. Obviously, if we have more people, we'll send more people to the emergency room, but I'd want it to stay the same percentage of people. So I would consider that success on our end. I would like to get data, and I don't have that data, of the hospitals. What happened there in the past year? And I'm just going to make this number up. Did you get 10,000 people that had a behavioral health or substance abuse problem grace your doors? Is it less this coming year with the BHUC there? That's what I would want to know. Maybe another piece would be whether it's less or not, did the people spend less time there? Because sometimes people are going to go to the ER. If I get good service from a hospital, that's where I'm going to go. Whether it's my appendicitis or I'm feeling depressed, I'm going to go. But that doesn't mean I have to stay there for several days. So did we spend less time? So summation of your question would be, I would want to see our numbers increase, and I would want to see some level of decrease for the hospital. I would then like to look at data. I'd like to get stakeholders together like sheriff, police, EMS. For example, I'm just giving you let's talk about Asheboro for a second. Last year, 2,947 people went to our BHUC. We had 319 times law enforcement came and dropped someone off. Did not go to the hospital, did not take them to jail, did not leave them in the community, not sure if they'd be back over the weekend. They took them to us. We had EMS and or the hospital, I need to break that out, send us 365 people. So I'm not saying Rockingham County will have those same numbers, but you're going to have some of those same numbers to some degree.
Chairman Richardson, if I could just jump in, I had Lance, I've been working with Billy and Anthony on this, and I had Lance contact the Sheriff's Department. And the numbers that they gave me, particularly for Rockingham County, was that in the last year, they were working with 366 involuntary commitments, and they estimated that they had 1,335 hours used up by our Sheriff's Department trying to transport people and get them the help they need through emergency departments and that sort of thing. So there's a potential benefit for that as well, going to Billy's point.
So on the issue of success that Chairman Richardson brought up, is it fair to say that to some degree there's not going to be metrics on the front end of this, but maybe 6 months to 8 months down the road where you can actually develop metrics that you can gauge the success of this program? Is that correct?
That is pretty much correct. We did the same thing in Forsyth County, and how we started out, the metrics were pretty simple. We wanted to see more people come to our clinic, not just the people that came from 8 to 5 that were not, I'm not talking appointments here. I'm talking about, they're saying they're in a crisis, showing up on demand. And we wanted to see a decrease in the number of people going to the ED. So those were our starting out of the gate metrics 1 and 2. As we went forward, EMS got in the mix. Law enforcement got in the mix. That was really, it started out as a messy process and ended up as a good process. For example, EMS thought this is awesome, and they were bringing people by and letting people out, and we were having a Narcan them, and they weren't staying. It was scary, so we had to set standards. Okay, EMS, if you've just Narcan someone, either take them to the ER or can you be with us for another hour to see if they need it again? Because depending on how much heroin they've taken or fentanyl they've taken. Once we got those things worked out, and the same thing with law enforcement. Now EMS is pretty clear cut. Law enforcement is still, we're still having discussions around law enforcement. We have law enforcement officers that say we love the BHUC. They just bring people by. They know the type of people to bring by. They know we're not going to wrestle somebody to the ground. We don't force medications, so they don't bring those folks. We've had some other officers that will say, well, I took somebody once and they still send them to the hospital anyway under commitment, which is true. We had some patients get pretty assaultive, and we can't medicate them. So we're still working out some of those metrics with law enforcement. But over the past year, after that first year, we have really worked some tight metrics out with EMS. So the answer is, I would go with the easy metrics out of the gate, just the numbers. Do you increase one number and decrease another? And then I would get real specific with your EMS director and your law enforcement providers.
So when it comes to law enforcement, correct me if I'm wrong, but most of the people or all of the people that are going to drop off, I assume, is going to be on a voluntary basis. It's going to be somebody that they go out into the neighborhood they're having a problem with, and they talk them into allowing them to transport them to your facility where they can seek an assessment to see if they're in a crisis or if they need care. Is that correct?
It started out in Forsyth. There was a lot of IVCs, and we got more and more voluntary. I'm not exactly sure the reason for that. I would like to think it's a combination of two things. They understood the type of people we could take, and the other part was often law enforcement had one tool. Well, they had two decisions to make. I commit them or I leave. There's a third decision now. I can talk them into coming over here. And I think there's a lot of that going on once we got opened. And like I said, that is the one, a year and a half, 2 years later, we're still massaging those metrics. Where EMS, we've knocked that out pretty in short order.
And how many people there's confusion on these numbers, but I believe in some of the meetings, because I worked on this with Commissioner Barrett as well, some of the meetings, what was the number of people that is being helped by your facilities outside of this county, those people from Rockingham County?
So last fiscal year, I did bring those numbers, and I've sent a lot of this to various emails. I'll try to put it all in one email so it'll be one to everyone. It was a total of 106 Rockingham County citizens, and for 771 bed days. And what that means is these folks came to our clinic here in Rockingham County, or maybe they were at a hospital, or maybe they found their way to one of our clinics, but they needed, I would love to tell you, behavioral health services, and they probably did that too, but it was almost exclusively detox or induction due to alcohol and opioids or heroin. So out of that, we sent 33 people to Randolph County, we sent 60 to Davidson, 9 to Iredell County. We have facilities in these counties. We sent 4 to Cabarrus, none went to Union. So we have a lot of beds. It did come up, well, why don't we build a facility-based crisis here? Well, I know not getting off topic, but if you took all 106 of those people and you got paid $1,000 a day for them, which you're not going to get paid that much, not even close, you still couldn't pay for 6 months of one of these facilities. These are $2.7 million facilities. Plus, you're going to have another one opening, I think, not under us, in Forsyth County, and I think Guilford may have another one opening, or maybe have just opened one soon. So,
one last thing, and then I'll pass this along to someone else. Our Department of Social Services has a group that goes out and interviews and tries to intervene with people that tend to abuse EMS services. This would provide another tool for their toolbox if they can get these people to voluntarily come to the BHUC, where they can be assessed and sent on, instead of tying up the EMS unit plus the emergency room, only to see them later, 3 or 4 hours later, walking back home. Is that?
That is correct. And we can do that to some degree now with our walk-in clinic. But, you know, a lot of folks, our citizens understand what's going on. Gosh, it's 3 o'clock. I'm deciding I'm wanting help now. But they close in 2 hours. Do I really want help? So they decide not to come because we're going to close. There will be no excuse now, whether you want to get help on Saturday or 3 o'clock on a Wednesday.
Thank you.
You mentioned a couple of others are opening, and you said it's not through.
Well, I was talking about facility-based inpatient units, not BHUCs.
Yes, sir. And those facilities that are opening, even though they're not under Daymark, will they be privately funded? Will they be? Or is it a organization similar to Daymark or similar to Sandhills?
They're not-for-profits or hospitals, which are not-for-profits, and we refer to them. They're paid for by Sandhills, via partners, organizations like Sandhills.
Daymark.
Not part of Daymark.
Okay. And I know when some of this started, as far as discussions, not necessarily with you, but among commissioners, I kept hearing about a study that was being done or was to be done or performed, and I'm understanding at this point that study has not even started.
The behavioral health unit, they actually have done some work, but if you're asking when it's going to be completed, it's the middle of September. Okay. To be completed, based on the timeline that I've received from Trey.
Okay, so they have started at this point. I think earlier today I was told it had not started. So.
It's started, correct? They've actually started on March the 20th, and they've done a little bit of work so far.
Okay. And then I've also actually heard that hospitals were asking for information from the study, and perhaps they would be contributing to what we're looking at doing, but we don't have anything at this point, and they're waiting on the study. Is that right?
Now I've engaged the hospital to get information from them. They haven't mentioned anything about contributing finances or any type of funding yet. It would be nice, very nice to get that.
Okay. Do we know what they're looking for? Do we know, they being the hospitals?
No, sir. I've just recently engaged and told them what we were doing.
Okay. Have they been part of any meetings? Are they part of this study that we're doing? So will be means not yet, right?
They haven't been involved yet, no. We're starting this, and I've gotten emails back from Angie with Annie Penn and Steve from UNCR, and they're both very interested in this process.
Yeah, I can share with you, I had conversations last Monday with the CEO of Cone Hospital, and they are indeed very interested in that. They do not have any sort of specificity about how they would participate, but they felt that they needed to be participant because they get some of the clients, and there's some back and forth. They're also very interested in the sort of support personnel you need to operate one of these, and they're not sure they have the right mix. That said, it is not anything definitive like asking for something specific from us or offering anything. But at least Cone Hospital at the CEO level is very interested in what we're doing.
And the end result would be, if we do alleviate some of the stresses that they have, that they may be inclined to assist the county with potential funding. But that has not been discussed. To Commissioner Berger's comments.
I could get clarification, because I thought I had discussed this with Felissa previously. As part of the behavioral health assessment, the study will be reaching out to the hospitals to gather information, correct? Sorry.
Good evening, gentlemen. Yes, we've already started actually having conversations with Crescendo. We're having weekly meetings or every 10 days or so. We actually are going to be getting some focus groups together. We've already started getting some worksheets together, giving them information about the stakeholders in our community, talking about who the leadership group's going to be, nonprofits that they need to be working with, our law enforcement, our emergency services, our hospital folks. So we're pulling all of that together. We're also helping them with data. I've sent a bunch of data and data points to them, like where they can find things, what they need to be looking at. They'll send me emails back saying, hey, do you have anything on this? We'll get them connected with those things that are at the state level so they can start researching that, putting that together. So the plan is in a couple of weeks that they're going to be coming here to Rockingham County. Initially, it's going to be meeting with the core group of us that kind of, put together the contract so that they can kind of get a bearing of what the community is. And then we're going to be helping them get some of the information so then they can start having focus groups. So it's a process. It doesn't happen all at once, but we've already started that process. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Sure.
Could I ask you a question before you step away? Of course, I was involved with these talks that you're talking about, but it was my understanding that the assessment was going to deal more with the fragmented treatment in the county and what may be needed to supplement the gaps there, but would not necessarily affect a behavioral urgent care, which is basically a clearinghouse that people can go to get help and be sent to other places. Is that, am I wrong?
So your assessment is going to look at a lot of different factors of what's happening in your behavioral health system, where are your gaps, and then they're going to make recommendations about, here are some things that might be able to help with some of those things that you're talking about. It could also look at a BHUC light and say, is this the right fit for your community as we roll this out? They may see something that, hey, have you ever thought about trying this? Here's some things in other states or other organizations that have addressed this, and here's a funding mechanism. They're going to pull data together. We might be able to use some of that data to write for grants. So it's a collaboration or a consolidation of that information.
And so, to Mr. West and to Anthony, have you ever been involved with this type of situation where there's a recommendation come back that you not do a BHUC? Or is it been rolled up into the assessment all the way around to be another tool in the toolbox for mental health or behavioral health?
I've been involved in several assessments like this. I've not had a recommendation not to do a BHUC. I've had some recommendations not to do a facility-based crisis. Those are $2.6 million, but and the BHUG is relatively new, so I don't know that, maybe that is because of timing too.
And to your point, Commissioner, we've been part of assessments over time. There's a couple of other counties in our area who are going through assessment processes at the moment. But BHUGs are relatively new, so it's a concept that is beginning to spread. So I've never seen one recommend not moving forward with a BHUG, but I think largely that's a factor of the newness of the service and beginning to roll it out.
Understand. Thank you.
Sure.
When you say new, I think some of the information you sent over, most of them were 2 years or
2 to 5 years.
Further questions, gentlemen?
Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
As we've been talking, I've heard you say a lot of numbers that seem to be participants in the program, but how are we judging outcomes? How do we know that we're moving the needle with regards to individuals' lives? How do we know that we're being effective?
Well, when you're talking about outpatient care, that's a different set of outcomes. When you talk about inpatient care, that's a set of outcomes. When you're talking about the behavioral health urgent care, the BHUC, we have one outcome we look at really, and that says, did we divert that person from the hospital and get them linked to a different service? Now, I can't really say what's going to happen after we link them. That's up to that service then. They have their own outcomes. But my piece of it is we sent, I'm just going to use Asheboro again, 2,947 people came in saying, I got to be seen right now, some under commitment. Some certainly met the criteria for commitment. They just were not under commitment. Some probably would have made their way to the ER, but really they didn't even need to see us, but they were upset for whatever the reason. We only sent, we had 98, I don't have the math, I just have the percentage, 98% were diverted from the emergency room. So we're looking at, we're trying to keep it under 5% is our goal to keep from going to the emergency room. Now, we just opened Mecklenburg County. We're at 6% right now. So there's a big scramble going on. What in the world's going on? Because we've promised under 5, and I'm going to tell you, people look at these percentages. Maybe it's because those 6% needed to go. I don't know. We actually had one person code on us, and they went. So you can't argue with that. But nevertheless, that's how we measure it in a behavioral health urgent care. Did they stay out of the emergency room?
Another question, it may have been asked in a different way, and I apologize if I'm repeating myself, but without having this assessment back at this point, what we're physically building, the physical plant, the structure, the things we're changing, are we confident that what we're doing will meet the need and will be in alignment with what the assessment may come back and say?
Well, this is just my opinion and my opinion only about the building, and we are very grateful for the building. The building is an old building in and of itself. It's going to need repair, whether you do this or not. If we moved out tomorrow and you said you're going to use it for storage, you're going to need to put some repairs in this building. So I think with what's being proposed, if this BHUC thing goes through, it's a good idea to go ahead and make these repairs. If the assessment comes back and says, no, you need an inpatient unit, or no, it just needs to be office space, you don't need a BHUC, it's just a matter of then of adding walls instead of large observation rooms. So I think it's probably a safe bet to give some love and care to that building, whether the BHUC comes through or not. That's just my opinion. You might want to talk to your county folks about that.
Thank you.
Yeah, and you mentioned, I think you said for Scythe, with having some, I guess you can say metrics when they opened, and then they've adjusted those metrics.
Correct.
You just mentioned Mecklenburg had some metrics when they opened, which I believe had to do with the ER, and maybe there were some others, I don't know. When these facilities have opened and you've been a part of it, has there been some metrics that people have asked for at the very beginning, or do they typically just adjust those over time?
I would say they're adjusted over time. I mean, candidly, how it works out, everybody talks about metrics. We have lots and lots of meetings. No one can come up with something concrete. I'll go to the MCO. We'll sit down and say, well, we're giving you this money. Let's figure out what you're going to do for it. And it always comes back, the percentage of people you send to the ER has to be low. And then we want to see the number of people going to the ER low. So that's our standard. Now, and then what ends up happening are two things. EMS is normally first to the table. They're the ones that truly look at metrics because it's easy to do. If the blood pressure is a certain amount, they go to the ER. If they're not, they stay with us. There's measurable things. The hospital talks a lot about metrics. We're going to give you the data. We're going to give you the data tomorrow. We haven't gotten a lot of data back from the hospital. We have lots of anecdotal data from the hospital, but we don't have concrete data from the hospital. I'm not talking about here. I'm just talking about our experiences.
And just to kind of hone in a little bit, as the facilities, although they adjust over time, do they typically start with any metrics?
Yes, they start with, we want to see an increase in the number of people we serve, and we do not want anything over 5% going to the emergency room. Okay. We reach out to the emergency room and we ask for their data. Sometimes we get it, most of the times we don't, or we get new data. And then the communities kind of decide. In Union County, Sheriff Cathy decided. He decided, well, I got too many people, I'm going on call, so he comes to the meeting, and so a lot of times the community starts demanding different types of metrics, and that's okay.
So I guess to the two commissioners that served on that committee, have y'all come up with any metrics in your committee?
Not as a committee, not that I'm aware of. I think the things that we had discussed anecdotally was seeing what we could do with trying to reduce some of the hours that are being spent by our sheriff's department. I think that was a pretty consistent one. And then just seeing how many people we can get into programs to help alleviate mental health and opioids.
But that's just been discussed outside the committee. The committee itself has not.
Anecdotally, we didn't put it to a vote or anything. But I mean, I think these are. We don't even know if we're getting this going yet. You know, that's why we're here tonight. But I think the metrics Billy laid out and those two things I mentioned would certainly be a good start.
So I've got a follow-up question for you, Billy. You mentioned something about involuntary commitments. You can't do anything with them, can you, or can you?
We can, but you know, we cannot force medications, and we cannot take aggressive folks. And I can give you chapter and verse on how many folks we have in Winston-Salem that are under involuntary commitments, how many times we've had to say, no, this guy has to go to the hospital. And how many times when we got into it with law enforcement a few times, it's not always, you know, they keep bringing them back, and we had a real bad assault one night. With our staff because somebody came back, well, he's calm. Well, of course he's calm until he's not. And so we can't force medications because you need 2 physicians 24/7 to be able to do that. We can't do chemical and physical restraints. So that's our limitations.
All right, so let me ask you a hypothetical question. Sheriff's Department judge issues an involuntary commitment, or maybe a doctor decides to do it on. The Sheriff's Department can bring them to your facility.
They can bring them now. The difference now is it's not locked.
Okay.
And so the sheriff would have to stay.
Right.
And if I'm the sheriff or anybody, I wouldn't want to stay. So in a locked facility, what we do is people come in. We have the nurse come in. We do, or whomever, health check tech come in, make sure vitals are okay, take a brief history while you're there. If you say you just swallowed a bunch of cocaine, you're going to the ER. But if everything checks out, at that moment, we're going to, you know, he's under involuntary commitment. Well, why? Is he suicidal? If so, you can leave. He's locked up in here. He can't hurt himself because he's violent and aggressive and paranoid. Well, that's a different animal. That's something we can't do.
So in the situation I give you, provided that the patient is not violent,
we can take them.
You could take them, and the sheriff's deputy could leave the facility. Whereas, as of now, when they go to the emergency room, they have to stay there because that's not a locked, so to speak, facility. So they're staying there with the patient until a decision is rendered as to where they're going to go to receive treatment or if they're going to be released. Is that correct?
I understand. It's different in every county, but that's my understanding in this county.
And then the last thing, when we start talking about the metrics, you administer these BHUGs. That's one of the things you do.
Several of them.
So in our conversations, you have talked about considerably the amount of people that you have come to your facilities. Mm-hmm. And you've also made known in our committee meetings about the reduction in the ED. But as a county commissioner, I'm certainly interested in that. But one of the things that we've talked relentlessly about is how that would affect the sheriff and law enforcement. And we just described that. Is that correct?
That would be, they can certainly bring a percentage of folks to us, absolutely. I just wouldn't want to promise that that's going to be the cure to all your ills.
And I understand that, but I just want to make sure that we understand that Commissioner Barrow nor myself did not come out of these meetings without trying to establish metrics for what you, because you have established metrics. We don't operate the BHUG, you do. And so you're the one that's come and said it's the amount of customers we see based on the amount of patients we see and reducing the load on the ED, and you've given us that information up from other areas tonight. Is that correct?
Right. Because what happens when the sheriff brings someone to us, commitment or not commitment, it's a locked facility. The chances of that person getting committed and having to go to the ER is pretty slim. If you take someone to the ER, particularly if they're under commitment, but even if they're not, the chances of them remaining on that commitment for some period of time longer than they need to be there are pretty high. So,
thank you.
I don't know if this is a question for our manager, or I see, Shane or Captain Bullins back in the back. As we keep track of where the officers are as far as with the vehicles, are we keeping track of, and I heard something earlier as far as man hours estimated from the Sheriff's Department. Are we able to track that?
They can, Shane, you may want to address this, but I get a monthly report from the Sheriff's Department. They do track those hours and miles that they take and all the the time they spend with them.
So we'd be able to see, as far as tracking that in the future, see whether or not there's a reduction, see whether or not there's an increase, or what's taking place, I'm assuming.
Yes.
Okay.
Right. We don't track it from the standpoint of patrol. We track it from the standpoint of when they leave the hospital to go to the second evaluation, and then once that second evaluation is completed, going back to get them and then bringing them back to their residence. But as far as the patrol, it's not tracked that way.
Do you guys keep up with the time that your employees are in the hospital with the patient, correct?
Yes.
Okay. So you could tell,
there's something already in place to where it really wouldn't take a lot of, or would it take much effort to keep up with that in the future?
No, we can do that.
And I get the report once a month, and Shane, you correct me if I'm wrong, but it's pretty easy to follow.
Yeah. We don't, again, we don't track it for patrol-wise right now, but that wouldn't be any issue to start.
Okay.
But then once you take them to, if you took them to this BHUG, you make a notation that it's coming from law enforcement, right?
We do.
Because you've been able to give us. So that's the backup. That would be the backup. If he says that he got 1,300 patients then we're going to expect to see some numbers or decrease in numbers or something.
And the only time we would want him to come back is if they remain or they get under commitment and we can't handle them. And like I said, that's less than 5% of the people. And if they went to our facility-based crisis, all 106 people I told you about, we either had the families or we provided the rides home for them. Now, they may have come by law enforcement, or they may have come by family, or however they got there, but we get them home.
Thank you.
And the hours that Commissioner Barrow read off, that's just for the county owned. That's not the towns or the cities.
I'm going to kind of go off the script a little bit and ask Keith Duncan to come up. because we're going to be making a vote here shortly about this BHUG. And Keith, if you're willing to come up and tell us from a historical perspective, Keith is the most experienced guy that's been a commissioner or anyone around. He was with Centerpoint. He was with our local agencies. He was with Cardinal even before I got there, and doing great stuff. I'm just curious about your perception of what we are proposing at this point compared to how we've served our citizens in the past.
Well, I'm excited that we're having a discussion tonight because it's been discussed for the past 25, 30 years in this room. And I remember back when Rockingham County managed our own mental health, we used to take people to Butner, which was an all-day trip, and if the patient was at risk, meant a deputy rode in that ambulance, and a deputy followed in the car to Butner. You remember? And unfortunately, the situation hadn't got any better. It's just more complex today. And you know, I know I remember one year I was on the board, I think we had to appropriate an extra, I think it was $70-some thousand to offset the cost of the Sheriff's Department along with the municipalities for the ER, having deputies in the emergency rooms, because of their inability to have somebody to see those patients because they were in a situation too, just like us. And just to give you, and I'm going to be brief and I'll sit down, but I do want to tell you that, you know, I've been involved in either DSS mental health or public health for probably 30 years on these boards. And I've served at Centerpoint, Cardinal, now serving with Sandhills, and y'all made a great decision going with Sandhills. I've really been impressed and hate to see Victoria leave, but we'll be in good hands with Anthony. But we have a great board, and I've been amazed at how we do business there. But when I was at Cardinal, there was a 14 or either 16-year-old that was missing for 22 days in Cabarrus County. Nobody had a clue where the child was. Our board got scolded twice by an attorney because of that situation. Right here in Rockingham County, probably 20 years ago, a 14-year-old from Alamance County sit in the ER at Moorhead for 22 days with round-the-clock protection. So anything that you can do tonight, and I really do think, and I understand each person's questions and concerns because it's taking a chance, it's a risk. But it's a good place to start, and like I said, after 6 months, a year, you're going to know if it's going to work. And I'm excited you're having this discussion because it's something I have been around the table for at least 20 years with either Moorhead Hospital, county commissioners, talking about how to alleviate this problem or make it better and to try to make it easier to assess people in need and decide whether they need to be medicated or administered somewhere. So that's really about all I can say. I've learned a lot over the years, and unfortunately what I've seen is our society is getting more complex and it's going in a bad direction. And I will say too, I know Commissioner Powell, me and him has talked about this, you know, with his mother. I had a sister that passed away because of drugs. So it's affected me, and I understand the situation, but I don't know what else to say, but I hope you make a good decision tonight. Let's try it and see where we go. And I appreciate the job you guys do. Y'all look good sitting up there, and Lance, good to see you. Long time ago here, so it's good to see Clyde. Thank you.
Keith, I think some better than others. So, but
I would like to say real quick, me and the sheriff have I was here on this board before Sheriff Page came into office, but we have had many conversations over the years, usually on a bi-weekly basis, about this very issue. And I really do think that this program, and I know Mr. Bullins, Captain Bullins can speak, I know these guys are under stress inside the jail and probably need more staffing, I'm sure, in certain areas. And you do a great job with what you got. But I'm sure this is going to be helpful to the Sheriff's Department and all law enforcement in the county. I mean, in the whole county municipalities too. So you got a tough decision to make. I've been there. I know you make a right one.
Thank you very much. There has been a lot of conversation here now, but I think this deserved a lot of conversation. If we need more at this point.
When does your committee meet again? Do they meet again?
We don't have a meeting scheduled. Once we made the decision about what we were going to do with the BHUC, the only other committee was the people that were getting the behavioral health assessment together. Our Representative Pirtle just said, call us when we need him, and that's where we left it. So.
Well, I mean, I think I've told each of you my issue has been we don't have any beginning metrics, and I'd like to see either your group or whether it's Mr. West and your group or Mr. West and Ms. Farrell and some other folks bring us some sort of initial metrics, knowing that it can be adjusted over time.
Just after hearing what we discussed tonight, I mean, would you agree that what we just discussed with man hours and time from the Sheriff's Department, 5% ED, are these reasonable starting points?
I don't dispute that at all. I mean, my issue has been we haven't had anything as far as, what's the beginning metrics? And I really haven't gotten any clear answers. So, yeah, if we could have some metrics established, I'm fine with those as starting points.
Okay, I think it's when, I know, Clyde, you might have to listen to this. Within my purveyance to appoint a committee consisting of Lance, Mr. Barrow, Mr. Powell, and Ms. Farrell, Mrs. Farrell, to review that and make suggestions.
And also I'll include Billy and somebody from Sand Hills.
I leave that to your judgment with the commissioners about what you think is best. And if you nod agreeably, we'll move on from that. Right, and thank you very much. That said, do we have a motion?
I'd like to make a motion to approve. Sorry, do I need to read the whole?
No.
Okay, I make a motion to approve.
I would second that.
Motion to approve the resolution as presented by our county and seconded. Further discussion? Hear none. All those in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Thank you very much. New business, Mr. Manager.
No, sir.
Commissioner
with the committee.
We're going to get a little bit nugatory here. So if you guys want to go back to Rockingham, the town, you're welcome. We're not offended. And Billy, I appreciate your efforts not only tonight, but all the things you've contributed there. And Victoria keeps a close eye on all of us. So she sometimes says, you guys are doing great work, and what we're doing is what she has set up for us. And we don't mind. It's good stuff. Thank you. Commissioner comments, starting with Commissioner Barrow.
I appreciate everybody sticking it out tonight. I know it was a long meeting. I'm very excited to see the results going forward with this BHUC. I'm glad we were able to get it started. I would just like to remind everybody that on April the 20th from 10 to 4 at the RCC Gymnasium, they will be holding the Maternal and Child Health Expo. If you are in a situation where you're a mother or have a child on the way, it's a great resource for the community. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Berger.
No comment.
Commissioner Powell.
I too would like to thank all those involved in the discussion tonight for the BHUC. I think it's going to be great for our county. We certainly can meet and try to nail down some of the concerns that others have had so that we can get everybody comfortable. But for tonight, I think this is a win for the citizens of Rockingham County. I would like to make two announcements. One, on June the 24th, the Hunting and Fishing Advisory Committee will be hosting a canoe trip or a tubing trip down the river, Dan River, starting at River Park in Madison. We'll be feeding the kids at 11 o'clock, starting the trip down the river at 12. That will be posted on the county's website shortly. So if you're interested or you have children that are interested, I would certainly encourage you to sign up because there is a limit on how many we can take. But I think this time it's about 60, including the chaperones. In addition to that, this Friday night at Covington Wesley Memorial Church in Reedsville on Vance Street, the Down East Boys, a local Southern gospel group headquartered right here in our county, along with the Hoppers, that's the only two full-time groups I know of in this county, will be having their homecoming. It'll be Friday and Saturday night. That'll be some of the very best in gospel music, Southern gospel music that you can hear, and certainly would encourage you to support them and their effort. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you. Commissioner Hall.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like to thank, tonight in attendance, we had Ms. Virginia Hoover, Madison Town Alderman, as well as a former school board member. And as we know, Keith Duncan, former county commissioner, and current Sand Hills board member. We appreciate your dedication to this community. Thank you, Keith. Mr. Chair.
Thank you, and I too would like to thank the public for being here and being patient. It was important stuff that we had to get out, and I'm particularly pleased with the entire board in regard to being constantly aware of cost versus the benefit. And I think a lot of these questions, we're not trying to be the expert, but we are trying to see that there's a reasonable way of assessing what we're paying versus how much the return is. And I would expect this board to do that. And a special word of thanks to Commissioners Powell and Barra, who've led the way on this opioid mental health situation. And I know you guys will be called on for more labors, and we appreciate that in advance. In a moment, we'll be asking for a motion to go into closed session. Anything else for the open session? And this closed session will be to approve the closed session minutes and instruct our negotiating agents. Do we have a motion regarding the same?
Make a motion. Second.
Motion made in second. Further discussion? Hearing none. All those in favor indicate by the sound of aye. Aye. Those opposed by nay. Gentlemen, I think we can stay right here. And